Retour sur le plateau de Vape.
Ladies and gentlemen, very welcome here to the last part of our discussion or conference or meeting, let's say. So let's try to have, a friendly meeting and dealing with something which is really very pleasant. It is culture. So culture linked to e-cigarette, and we have different forms, we have different profiles. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Is your translation working? Can you hear me? Is English translation? Can you hear my translation? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? It's not working. Just a second. Just a second. So is English translation working? Can you hear me? Please raise your hands. Is the English translation working? Okay, good, thank you. So I was dealing with culture, vaping culture, and it's a method, of course, of living in culture, vape culture. And it can be a consensus, can't be underground, could be diffused. And thanks to friends here and really VIPs of vape, if I may say, we can see how that culture is being renewed. We have Phil BUSARDO from the United States, who is a reviewer, and he has an excellent sense of humor, and he will deal with the last material on the market. Here on my right, KOUNEN, you may know him, he's a movie maker from France, and he is actually making something very specific, dealing with a documentary film, and he will deal with that. And he went in Asia, he went in the United States, he met a lot of producers of e-liquids, of different elements, and is, really here a specialist and has an expertise on that. Oliver KERSHAW also, who is the director of the e-cigarette forum and vaping.com, and he will actually tell us the data we have and the facts he has collected in his forum. And each day, since 2007, he really had great experience with vapors, with smokers, and he will, tell us the story about all that matter. Now we shall start maybe with Oliver. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. That was a lovely introduction. This is a bit of a reworking of. I apologise in advance if it's a little data heavy, but I think some of the data that we've kind of picked up over the last couple of years really tells a bit of a story about what's going on in vape culture, particularly in the United States, which is where the vast majority of our visitors and members come from. E-cigarette forum, the world's oldest and largest vaping community. I founded it in 2007, and now we have roughly 3 million visits a month, 1.25 uniques a month, and a huge traffic increase between 2013 and 2014, which I think probably represents, some shift in vaping into a sort of mass market. So we conduct this survey annually, and this year we received 10,000, a little over 10,000 responses. The vast majority of them were from the United States. Now, just to kind of contextualize what I see kind of happening is this graph, which is Google Trends, the rise of vaping. If you look at the two graphs there, you can see searches for e-cigarette reaching sort of peaks in 2012 and steadily carrying on. And then if you look at people looking for vaping, you can see that beginning to really increase in 2013 and absolutely exploding up and overtaking in April 2014. And in fact, the graph, if you look at it now, it's a little out of date now, but it's completely trounced it. The interest now is in vaping. So if you use this word as a sort of symbol for the overall kind of cultural gravity, what people are interested in, it's clearly that it isn't these e-cigarettes anymore, it's this vaping.
Alors Oliver, juste si tu peux rester sur ce slide qui est intéressant.
We may stick to that slide. In France, when we see Google Trends and we have a look at the peaks of the rockets, of course linked to e-cigarette, we can realize that they are linked to press releases which are quite alarmist, you know. And I'm thinking about the Minister of Health in France who, you know, said something about that, and then the public authorities dealing with that topic. And each time you have really something impressive on the rockets. So it can be an incentive or it can discourage. What do you think? Do you confirm that trend with those kind of data that you have here?
I don't see it at all in the same way. I think if you look at these peaks here, they're all New Year's. They're people who are, you know, looking to quit smoking around at the beginning of the year. And then, unfortunately, with e-cigarettes, they often sort of realise, the cigarette type products are not going to get them there, and you get this decline. And I think that's what you're seeing in these peaks. But this consistent interest that's growing and growing, and we've had a little wobble recently, but it's, you know, vaping is now the thing that people are interested in. I just think that's quite a nice way of representing the sort of shift in the wider culture. So, you know, taking it back, a lot of the early development in the kind of second generation, third generation, the mods and so on, started with our members and members of other forums. This, to me, is actually a really, it's not a great photo, but it's a really historical photo. This is an old ECF member who I haven't seen for years, Troc, who put this photo up and said, I've created something special. But he said, but there's nothing really special about it except for the manual switch and the decent-sized battery, the way it looks and the fact that it shouldn't wear out, and it doesn't look like a bloody tobacco product. That, to me, is almost the genesis of everything in a funny way. And that device itself sold extremely well for him, and was quickly copied by the Chinese. So, you know, history was written there. I'm not going to talk about this because this is a little bit too kind of political. We're talking more about the American sort of culture. But this is a lovely quote. This is kind of showing what I see as being the real driving force behind vaping is people really being passionate about it and wanting to explain to new people precisely, you know, what to do in order to, you know, people like Phil who do wonderful, videos about explaining exactly his situation and his experience, and people getting to understand how these products work. Because for many people, they don't work out of the box. You need, and Phil spoke very eloquently this afternoon about the notion of this vaping journey. And we've picked up on it in our data as well, this notion of a vaping journey that seems to sort of take about three months for people to kind of coalesce on that product that allows them to completely transition away from smoking to e-cigarettes.
Et est-ce que tu donc cette
So you were dealing with that kind of new learning phase. It seems simple, but at the end of the day, it's not so simple. You have different steps to make, and the interest of your forum or Briss's forum, with whom we've talked this morning, do you think it is a different dimension, important dimension, and you cannot dissociate the product from the information going together, and also the community?
Yeah, I think that's a very important point, is the degree to which people are using specific products because they have some intrinsic quality that works for them, or because, you know, there might be a bit of hype or some sort of salience within the wider community.
Donc dans l'idéal, dans l'idéal.
Ideally, when you sell an e-cigarette, on a shelf, you should need, like, a lot of information, 3 or 4 sheets of paper, or a professionist, an expert, diffusing the information. Is that important to have that diffusion of information?
I think it is, but at the same time, you're in this slightly difficult situation in which nobody really can tell what it is about the products that's going to work for people. You know, it's quite amusing when you listen to the tobacco industry talking about the fact that these products haven't been picked up, and they tend to say, well, the problem with them is, you know, they're just not enough like smoking. They're just not quite enough like smoking. And they really miss the point that hidden in smoking behaviour is actually, you know, you're inhaling something, and it's a whole range actually of potential pleasures and experiences, which a tobacco cigarette just condenses into, you know, really what's the difference between one cigarette and another? It's very marginal. But when you explode it out into the range of possibilities with vaping products, there's hundreds of different ways of getting that surplus pleasure that people can investigate and settle on and find their own thing. So, I mean, you know, when I set up the forum in 2007, I thought the products were pretty rubbish, but I thought to myself, okay, well, this is just an engineering problem, and in 2 years, the entrepreneurs that come on my website and the rest of it will have sorted it, and we'll have that ultimate product. But of course, it doesn't really exist. Not really. I mean, we have products, wonderful things being invented all the time that take each level to the next level, but there's no single product that will work for everybody. Vaping celebrities. I mean, look, absolutely. You know when a culture has arrived, when it has identifiable celebrities, and when they walk around getting mobbed at conventions. So you know, we got Phil, and then we got Nick as well, and this guy, and you know, where is the kind of central location of the venue of this culture? Well, it used to be specifically online, so on websites like mine. But of course, what we've had over the last, really, I would say over the last 18 months is the rise of the vape store. Does that sound right to you? You know, that's kind of the dominant.
Very much so.
The dominant kind of propellant of the culture. So everybody's coming up with different figures, but this is the most credible set of figures I'm in receipt of, which is, you know, 14,000 in the US, 2,500 to 5,000 in France, 800 in the UK. But I don't know, that might have gone up, Catherine? Yeah. Okay. So, but in particular was this enormous growth. So the beginning of 2013, there were 5,000 vape stores in the US, and that went to 14,000 in just over a year. Phenomenal growth, you know, and many of them are founded by vapers, some of them not, but each of them does serve as this sort of hub for local vapor culture.
Est-ce que tu dirais que l'Internet...
Do you think the Internet was the starting point of that vape culture? And is that enough now to accept and welcome that increasing number of vapors in the world? Do you think that beyond the opportunity at a commercial point of view, is that also a location, a venue of exchanges and the need of people to talk, to have a face-to-face relation? And the Internet is not enough. It goes beyond. We have a physical dimension here, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the internet was absolutely critical in its starting. I think it's funny that somebody said to me a little while ago, look, these aren't really high-tech products, it's just a battery and a coil. And I said, well, yeah, there's some truth in that. But they couldn't have existed 15 years ago because the batteries didn't have enough energy density. That's pretty high-tech. You know, that's you know, just the iteration of battery technology. And also, you know, it needed an online culture for it to start. It needed these people getting interested and sparking this kind of interest. And, you know, many people outside who were looking in, particularly from tobacco control, were very, very sniffy. They were saying, you know, this is ludicrous. This won't ever amount to much, but of course it's transmitted beyond the internet into the wider world, the face-to-face, the vape stores and the rest of it, and long may it continue. So these are a few little examples of this rise that, you know, so 34.12% of new vapors, people who are buying their first e-cigarette in the United States bought it in a vape store compared to 8.65 a year previously, and that has an impact also. Actually, I'll show you later on. But that has an impact on the types of experience that people start with. So when people were buying online, they were typically starting with tobacco flavours, assuming that you were going to try and transition to what you were doing previously, but in a safer form. Whereas now, if you go into a vape store, somebody will give you, any range of these products, and you probably won't start with the tobacco. You would start with something nice.
Do you, would you say that here we have, vapors or smokers, dual users, people who use both, both models and go on smoking? Do you think it is a strategy of tobacco industry to sell e-cigarettes, which look like the real cigarettes, and the users will continue to smoke traditional cigarettes? So is that the interest of those dealers, or is that a bit too exaggerated?
That's the big question, isn't it? I don't know. I mean, I think to some extent, strategically, they're not going to want to cannibalise their existing sales. I think that's obvious. I also get the sense that they're not, they don't really know what they're doing in this market. They're kind of floundering, and of course they want to lock it down to their existing distribution model. Here's something that people don't tend to talk about, but in addition to e-cigarettes representing a new way of consuming nicotine, it's also a profound shift in the way that nicotine is distributed through the sales outlets. It's not just that it's being delivered through e-cigarettes, but vape stores. I mean, it's an entirely new sector in which obviously the tobacco industry has no look in or interest. Although I suspect increasingly they will, as they see their sales decline. So, in reality, I think the disposable and the rechargeable, the reason that they're being pushed hard by the tobacco industry is because the tobacco industry believes that eventually, they think in very long time scales, they think eventually they're just going to own all of this anyway because they're so big and dominant. And also, it's the same size as a packet of cigarettes. Easy. Bosh. Whereas all of this stuff that we've got, is massive inventory. You can't put that on the shelves of a convenience store. It doesn't work. So...
Alors ça ne marche pas.
It doesn't work so well to calm or to piece down a very a great smoker, but people feel very attractive. The eye part is very important, and smokers see all these e-cigarettes, and no need to press a button. You have auto flow batteries. It has the same weight. It's very, very attractive, and people will have a look at that first kind of dispositive. But these kind of items have a limited efficiency, and when we need to go beyond the addiction, try to transform it in a new behavior, we'll need to have more information or be well informed by dealers or come to VAPEXPO.
Exactly. It's a tricky one because, of course, there is absolutely a necessity for certain products to appeal to people that would not start off using these products. And the degree to which people start off using those products and move into this is limited by, a number of factors. One of them being how many people they know that are using it. The degree to which that they're exposed to the wider vaping kind of culture. That's a big part of it. Sorry, Phil.
It's almost a comfort level. Okay, because when I started vaping, I wanted something that looked like a cigarette. I certainly would never have used this as my first device, right? Also, what was the e-liquid that I wanted to use? I wanted something that tasted just like a Marlboro Light, right? And then all of a sudden I discovered, oh my God, there's watermelon. I can vape watermelon. So there's definitely this progression that vapors will take. Small and something they're comfortable with and something they're used to, and then they start to discover everything else that's out there.
Mais on est d'accord que tout seul,
in fact, alone, the vapor who finds, on the floor an e-cigarette will not go so far. It means that in his struggle, in his fight against addiction, well, he needs to be, inside a group or anyway of a stream of vape in order to understand, to learn the good material, to test it and to understand how it works.
Absolutely, and that's why like all of our friends who vape now, I mean, they're comfortable vaping because they have a support group in us. We help them vape. So they feel comfortable using a bigger product around us, and they can try all these different e-liquids. So there's definitely a support group. I mean, even ECF. Like when first of all, thank you for starting ECF, because you can applaud that if you want, because believe it or not, there was a time when I didn't know anything about vaping. We all start someplace, right? So I can remember going on ECF and typing this word for word. I just got e-liquid in my mouth. Am I going to die? Because I didn't know. So, I mean, the ECF is an amazing... And sure, you can get information from me, information from other reviewers, but it's an instant gratification thing there. You post a question, you get an answer, and it's almost instant. So it's an amazing resource for vapers out there.
Good. Oh, thanks, man. I'm glad you think so. I mean, it's it's a big scary old thing that I created. Okay, I'll do a bit more. So obviously some of the cultural things around, the vapors have their own language, and if you were to define sort of subculture, you'd probably start with the language, wouldn't you? The new vernaculars that emerge, and we have a huge and expanding list of words, which seem to translate pretty well. They seem to cross borders. Everybody seems to have the same language. So back to the biggest trend in the last year, which is really the rise of the mech mod. The mech mod has been around for quite some time, but it only really started to take on significant presence as a big chunk of the overall market, and it's central now to the what I would describe the sort of centre of the cultural sort of gravity, really. Is the mech mod. And I don't mean that's what everybody's using, but I mean in terms of the visibility in the media and so on, the mech mod is increasingly becoming what's associated with vaping. And actually, my data's 5 months out of date. For all I know, it's 50% now. I mean, it really does change like that. It's quite extraordinary. So here's the overall device landscape from April. And we're going to have to start running these every 6 months, really. So there you go, roughly a third, and slightly less than a third on mechanical, or a quarter. But look at the shift. We've gone from mid-sized devices have gone up to 34. Mech mods have gone from 3.25, this is in 1 year, to 26.4. So really what we've seen is the bottom kind of falling out of the sort of the APV market.
Alors là, il faut prendre ces données quand même avec précaution.
You have to be precautious, of course, because I think that it is the habits of the consumers of the forum, ECF forum. So we don't have a representative population. And of course, we see that their habits change. And that doesn't mean that the market in general is changing as well.
No, we do have to be very careful about that indeed. I don't think you can take any of these figures as being representative in and of themselves, but what you can spot is trends emerging and things shifting. You'd really have to go out and do an actual house-to-house survey to get proper data. And boy, do I wish somebody would do it, because it would be pretty extraordinary. This is as good as we're going to get right now. So we can see shifts and trends and changes. But actually, although our members are skewed towards the male, slightly skewed towards lower socioeconomic groups, I think they're quite representative. They're not it's not comprised purely of geeks and nerds, like us. It's comprised of ordinary people, actually. Because remember, this isn't just our members. This is open to our site visitors as well, and that gets a huge range of voices coming on. So that's just another look at the atomizers, the real shift that that people have moved towards kind of the tanks. That's sort of interesting. There you go, 30% fruit, 22% tobacco. But here you go, this is what I like. Only 15% of customers who purchase their e-liquid in the bricks and mortar use tobacco as their main flavour. So there you go, there's that sort of experiential element. If they can try it, they're less likely to use the tobacco flavours because they discover the other flavours. I quite like that. And yeah, this also, I mean, you know, back to the wider sort of advocacy stuff, 65.5% of non-smoking vapors, so that's people that have made the transition, which is about 80% of our sample, consider flavours other than tobacco to have been important or very important in helping them quit tobacco smoking. So specifically the flavour.
On peut quand même juste revenir sur
about this notion of aromas in the liquids. It's very important. You just sold us. And in a world where the cigarettes would only have one taste, maybe menthol, that would be dramatic for the vulgarization of the e-cigarette. And of course you have to take into account that there needs to be a regulatory framework. And do you think, with these data that you found, that this is some sort of a menace for the e-cigarette? So if we would only have one taste, would that be catastrophic for the e-cigarette?
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Well, no.
Aux États,
I mean, yes.
C'est un sujet très sensible.
It would be crazy.
Very sensible subject, of course.
Très sensible. On a souvent.
It's a very sensible subject in the United States. Often the media said that, for example, candy tastes would convince youngsters to start smoking. And what do you think about this?
Well, I don't think youngsters start smoking or vaping on the basis of you know, bubble gum. It just lacks the very first level of sort of plausibility to me. But I mean, there will be youngsters that start vaping, and that obviously is something that has to be factored into to you know how everything is approached. But this notion that youngsters have been targeted on the basis of the flavours is just nonsense. And as somebody that has seen where the flavours really came from websites like mine, with people literally asking for them. You know, that's where it's coming. This is consumer-led. And yeah, okay, so the bubble gums and things like that are probably marketing gimmicks, but I don't see it as being aimed at children. What it is it's about creating surplus pleasure. You know, people want flavours because, you know, particularly smokers who've lost their olfactory capacity over time start to regain it. Why, of course you want more flavours. I mean, it's just a great thing.
Yeah. But I also think that we need to be careful with how we market this, okay? So, yes, somehow my taste buds have survived my adolescence, right? Somehow I still enjoy flavors. But we got to be careful with calling an e-liquid Papa Smurf, okay? Or a name that might be attractive to a child. We have to be careful with the labeling of our e-liquids. We don't want circus clowns and roller coasters and things like that on our e-liquids. So I think there's a way to get those flavors out there for people to enjoy them, but it needs to be done intelligently as well.
Definitely, and there are lots of companies doing it now that have become more sophisticated, you know, understand the dangers of putting out. Because, you know, this is, as much as we like to speak in sort of, you know, best case scenarios, and the reality is this is highly political, highly politicized. So even if there isn't a problem with adolescents choosing these supposedly targeted flavors, it doesn't matter because it's about perception at the end of the day. Trouble is, it's a bit of an unstoppable force. How do you stop people selling bubblegum flavor and things? Or actually, that's not really the most insidious, but you know what I mean. How do you do that? You can't. I mean, until regulations come in, which point it's too late. You know, that's the problem.
Self-regulation helps there.
Self-regulation definitely helps. How much e-liquid do you consume on a daily basis? Now, I don't have the comparison data, but it's 25% are vaping more than 6 milliliters per day. I was trying to get it earlier, but I couldn't access our data. That's more or less doubled in a year. So in aggregate, over 25% of our sample are now consuming more than 6 milliliters per day. And here's the other side of that story, which is the nicotine drop that we've seen over a year. So you can see a big shift in that distribution. So 2013 is in the orange and 2014 is in the grey. And you've got overall people are vaping less strong but more volume.
Donc ça, c'est peut-être dû à la...
Maybe that's... Do you think it's with the technological innovation of the material? Because we saw with from the INIS study that an e-cigarette is 7 times smaller while you inhale than when using, for example, a regular cigarette. So, if I'm not mistaken, it was a Joytech mode you were talking about before. So the fact that it has evolved, and would this impede the use of nicotine? Do you think that it stops the use in some way?
I'm not qualified to say, but my feeling is, and I think Jacques here somewhere, but that smokers tend to self-titrate. So whether they're using a high-strength nicotine or a low-strength nicotine, they get themselves up to their level. So then the question is, if somebody's choosing to use a lower strength but in higher volume, is that because there's an additional absorption element, or is it because there's just an additional pleasure element from the sensations created from large clouds of vapor, or is it just a function of a sort of cultural aspect where blowing large clouds of vapor is perceived to be, part of the main part of that culture? I don't want to call it a fad because I think for a lot of people it's important to be able to blow. And personally, I've found that since I've moved to this, I call this kind of volume-oriented vaping, I've moved towards that style, whereas previously I was somebody that was vaping sort of 50 milligram base, and I've moved much more towards this lung inhale, bigger clouds, and I have to say, I crave less. I'm sure I'm using the same amount of nicotine, but I feel less dependent. I feel like I can go without it longer. I don't, and I've heard I've heard this said as well about this style of vaping. So there's stuff there. I don't know. Where are we? I'm nearly done here. So that's the way I'm sort of looking at it now is this nicotine-oriented versus volume-oriented. And should we be talking about two ends of a spectrum, which you have, this nicotine-oriented vaping, which higher strength liquids used on typically smaller and less powerful devices, and on the other end, volume-oriented with lower strength but higher powered device, which is often sort of lung inhaled. And here's my question, something that we were discussing earlier, which I worry about a little bit, is if this cultural gravity is heading towards this volume-oriented and the mech mods and so on, what are those for whom those products are inappropriate that we were talking about earlier? Are they never going to move on to these products? And who's looking after there? Does the independent industry ensure they're not excluded? How would it do that or put off the category? Or are those smokers just going to be more effectively targeted by the tobacco industry that is clearly aiming to bring out those higher nicotine strength devices and to make them more efficient?
Alors, ce qui est très intéressant, moi, je trouve, dans ce que tu racontes, c'est que
we are under the impression that modern vape, we're talking about mech mods, big clouds, and sophisticated apparatus. Do you think that this denormalizes the act of smoking, and that tobacco will completely disappear behind this cloud of e-cigarette vapors? And of course, the more we tend to use these devices, sophisticated devices, the less we will have nicotine. And do you think that there will be a double positive effect in this? Could you confirm this? So you use less nicotine because of the innovation. Is it something you've seen in your environment? True. When you have a better quality in your material, then the nicotine level will be lower, and the experience will be perceived in another way. In California, well, it was difficult to find e-liquids. Well, here we're at the conference, of course, no, but we had 3 milligrams, 6 milligrams, and that was the maximum level. But in France, the levels are a lot higher. So I just started vaping 9 months ago before I was a smoker. So I started with 16 milligrams. And what shocked me was that the quality of the machines is a lot better. And the better the vape, the better or the less nicotine you will need. And the slower you will inhale. So I was really glad to stop smoking, of course, and to pass on to the electronic cigarette. But so sometimes it's difficult to find levels lower than 12 because they're drippers, for example. Here you can see a lot of people that vape with small reconstructables. But in other countries, you can only see drippers. So there's a different culture in every country. And the better the quality, the lower the level of nicotine, and the lower the addiction level as well. And I found that, for example, today, when I was a smoker, I took the airplane, and when I got off the airplane, I had to smoke a cigarette. And I came back from a trip. I just got into the taxi, I saw my family, and then all of a sudden I said, okay, I forgot to smoke. I'm just going to vape now. I don't know how to explain this difference in addiction, but it's something that really grasps you, and you feel less need to smoke than before. So that it's really important to have a very flexible regulatory framework as well, because it all comes from the diversity of the product. More you have choice, the more you have tastes, the more you have different possibilities, and the better the quality also can be of the material. And as you said this morning, when you are not willing to take the cigarette in hand because the material looks differently, then you're heading for the good direction.
Sorry, I was waiting for the translation. But yeah, you're absolutely right. See, what I've noticed is something a little bit different, okay? I'm still at a 12 milligram, but there's something that I really want from the industry. If you guys can make this happen, please make it happen. Because one thing that I desire from my electronic cigarette is throat hit. I am a mouth-to-lung vapor, okay? And it's that throat hit that I'm really, really after. That satisfies me. I enjoy that because it's what I got from a cigarette. What I am dying to try is a zero-nicotine e-liquid that produces the same exact throat hit that I get from my 12 milligram. Because what I want to know is what am I addicted to, really? Am I addicted to the sensation that I'm getting, or is it truly the nicotine? And the only way I'm going to find that out is if I can get a zero nic that has the same sensation. So would somebody please make that happen, please?
On va voir ça peut-être dans la conférence innovation à laquelle vous allez participer.
It will be a good thing to talk about later on in the other conference, so the technical dimension. I think to go into detail on culture, it's difficult to define culture, but within the vape culture, you have the stars, the VIPs. Within the groups, you have groups themselves. We talked about the fora before. There's fairs like this one in the United States, everywhere. But there's also a way of dressing. There's terminology. And they have drippers, the vapors, to just enter into detail as far as the subculture is concerned. So we have scientists as well that took the floor that presented studies, and that really joined the group. Oliver, what do you think about this terminology? What do you think about all of these things that are added to the culture? Does that bring something extra to the culture or not?
So terminology is an interesting thing because, of course, it's sort of needed for the culture to develop and pioneer and to separate itself out. The worry with terminology is that it becomes exclusive, that it actually causes people who aren't aware of the vernacular to feel like they're not included. And also jargon just puts many people off as well. So, but then again, absent of that product that we spoke about earlier, that style of vaping that is just sort of universal, you're always going to have this sort of terminology. I mean, I think there are some interesting sort of wider things to say about smokers as well, and the way that smokers have been stigmatized previously, and the sense that that vaping is a liberation not just from almost 50% certain death, but also towards the lack of stigmatization. It's not surprising that they formed these big and not single. I mean, like Jan and Phil both said, multiple groupings of people that are actually very tightly networked and communicate with. It's not surprising, but people seem surprised.
Alors, j'aimerais bien qu'on s'arrête un petit peu sur une comparaison.
We shall make a comparison here, comparing France and the United States. France has great influence on the US and vice versa. So last moods and trends and reviews, and have you seen last movie or whatever? Jan, you are just, made a mini tour of vape all over the world. You went to Asia, you went to the States, the ICC, of course, conference and event. Could you please tell us how you can imagine vape in French point of view, and also what was your experience in the United States as ethnocentric impression? What were your feelings? Actually, different things. First of all, as a French person, well, French people are appreciated in California. Not myself, but producers of liquids and.
Me. Okay, so you just let it go. Go ahead.
Non, mais j'ai trouvé que.
I found that I had ENG, for example, and Vincent was there, and I discovered that when it was sold, discussing with the sellers and the people of the boutique, and I asked and I said, what happened when ENG was sold? Well, people were here queuing and lining at 6 a.m. Imagine that. And the store, the boutique was opening at 11, but people were there queuing at 6 a.m. So, they're very demanding. And that's the point. And that's the relationship, if I may say. Now, as far as I discovered, we can see a progress. There is no doubt on that. There is a relationship really typically American with the hot culture, and it's very peaceful. And, we can have, very good discussions, and in the ICC people, it was different. We had plays, we had people, playing with bottles, a bit extreme for myself, if I may say. And at the same time, there was a show off, which was very interesting, and as a movie maker, I did appreciate that a lot. And the culture was really American, so really beautiful and pleasant. So if we make it in Garmisch-Partenkirchen, for example, on a bike, it can be different. It is. I think that the America looks like really our image, the image that we have in France, and a bit like in the movie and in the cinema. In the cinema, we have huge studios and we have independent people. And in France, we do not have a middle range. We have small movies, but in the States, you have the huge companies of vape, liquids or Space Jam stands that they were really all over the fair and with booth. And on the other hand, we had specific attention with very, very small stands with liquids, with people, and it was how shall I explain that. Really, really funny. It was funny. Really, it was terrific. And things that were new, brandly new, go-go dancers, vapes, and it was like something living, something, it was really interesting. We could see life. And that's very important. We saw that culture. It was living, a living culture. We had everything. The culture is so huge. You have diversity. You have a rich experience. And diversity means really that aspect. You have vapors, but you have, people which are different, maybe alternative. You have niche in the niche, if I may. And it's like tobacco. Tobacco, at the end of the day, everyone smokes, from the peasant to the CEO. And you have the possibility in the culture of vaping to touch and to have really an influence in the whole society. It could be mechanical, could be intellectual, could be musical. And I found that in the States, really we have that enormous expression of life. Phil, coming here in France, what is your opinion? Jan went to your country, you came here. What did struggle, or what did you think, or did you find here so exciting, so nice in Paris? What's your opinion? What is your feeling about France?
Tower is beautiful. I'm very impressed with this event, okay? Because you call it life. There's a lot of life at the American events. I think maybe there's a little bit too much life at the American events, okay? First of all, we would not be able to do this, what we're doing right now, at the American events. There is no way that we would be able to have a conference in the middle of an American event, because you would be fighting against that DJ over there and that DJ over there and what's going on here and all of the e-liquid that's getting thrown out over there and all of the T-shirts that are getting thrown out over here and just noise. You would never be able to do this. So I think the American events are full of life. I'm not against having fun, but there also needs to be an amount of professionalism in it too, especially since right now we're all under a microscope with the FDA. Okay? And when you have, because this actually happened, there were some commissioners from New York that came into ECC, and they wanted to see what vaping was all about. They walked in, they turned around, and they walked right back out. And there were some e-liquid vendors that ran after them, and they said, "Where are you guys going? What happened? What happened?" They said, "We want nothing to do with what's going on in there." That is not good. That is not good for the industry. And I've said this a couple of times online, where I feel like the industry, because we have enough of things to fight with the FDA and the regulations and everything else, but I'm getting to a point where I feel like the industry is becoming the industry's worst enemy. Okay? And that's something that I'm seeing in the States. They're still let's get through the regulations, let's do our fighting, let's do it professional, okay? And then maybe let's have our fun. But right now, there is a certain level of professionalism, that I'm seeing here. So congratulations on an amazing event, okay? And I think we can learn a lot from the way you guys are doing things here.
Okay, I have a question or something to add. It was quite fascinating in the States. I had that noise. You were dealing with the noise, and there was really a good show on the conference, and really about vape. We had a lot of people struggling for that culture. But 100 people in the audience, and 10,000 people in a huge room. But here, actually, we are in the center, and you're right, in the center of this fantastic location, the ancient slaughterhouse, and we can have a chat, we can discuss, we can have a dialogue. That is really enriching.
It's from my perspective, it's an amazing thing that I'm seeing here. Okay, but when you at a United States event, when you have an advocacy panel of specialists, of experts, of people like Oliver, and they're talking about what's important, okay? Because this is what's important. and you have this advocacy panel, and there are maybe 100 people listening to that panel, maybe 200 people, but there's a company that's throwing out free e-liquid, and there's about 2,000 people over there and 100 people over here. There's a problem. There's a very big problem there.
De votre point de vue, qu'est-ce qui manque justement
What is lacking? What is lacking, according to you, in the United States? Well, we could also think about France. Is there a lack of willingness or commitment in the way people want to, organize events, for example? Or is there FDA risk with FDA, non-conformity elements? So what is lacking today in order to have the willingness from those people, and really what is linked to their future?
Well, I think Oliver said it. I mean, how do you stop it at this point? I mean, it's kind of a train that's moving forward, and you don't really want to get in front of a train to try to stop it because you're going to get run over, right? So I think that maybe, look, I was a nightclub DJ for a long time. I'm not against having a good time. I'm all about having a good time, okay? But I think there's a time to have a good time, and there's a time to be professional, okay? So maybe if the events were a little bit more geared to, let's have not just a couple of hours of B2B, okay, business to business. Let's have a couple of days of business to business, right? And then if you want to have your party, and if you want to have everybody come in, then let's have a party, okay? But I think these vendors still need to do business, and they need to do it in a respectable, professional atmosphere. Okay, you cannot do business to business when there are DJs playing all around you, and there's half-naked girls. And I'm not against half-naked girls either, by the way. Okay, but when these things are going on, right, it's just not the right environment for that.
Alors j'ai une question, peut-être.
I have a question which is quite funny. The real vapor. Who is the real vapor and the false vapor? It's a bit funny. What about that definition? Shall we handle that? Shall we make a definition of the real and the false one? The real one with an important ego, and the other who is very performant. What do you think of that? You're smiling, so Oliver, what do you think?
Nicely goes back into that notion of exclusivity, which I don't think is particularly helpful. It's going to happen because that's just what we do as humans. We're sort of tribal, and we create our in-groups and out-groups. But I mean, there are some people who, for instance, are very sniffy about people that dual use. Somebody that carries on smoking. Now, of course, for that person's health, it's better for them to make the full transition. But that person might not be able to for whatever reason, and it's well understood that if somebody cuts down, that is the first step on the way to cessation. So if somebody's using an ego just to occasionally, sit in a bar where they can still vape, hopefully, then, that's a good thing, because that, A, means they're smoking less, and B, potentially puts them on that road, on that journey that Phil's talked about earlier, towards becoming that person that makes the full transition. But all of these notions of the true vapor and the false vapor, I mean, it would be perfectly reasonable as well for somebody to say, "Oh, you're obsessed with vaping. Why spend your life, talking about vaping? What a silly thing to do." So you've got to be a bit careful, I think.
Phil,
Phil, cloud chasing. We are dealing a lot with that. What do you think? It is fascinating, but it is worrying at the same time, because it is linked to the temperature, to manipulation, to electricity notions. We were dealing with that this morning. You you proposed different measures. In fact, for example, for wattage. Do you think it is a practice which is a minority, or it is being more and more diffused to have that big cloud?
Thanks a lot. Throw me under the bus with the cloud chasing question, right? Because we all know there's a whole bunch of drama about that out there. I'm a little bit worried about two things. The thing that I'm really worried about right now is the level of e-liquid in my K fund. It's damn near empty. But what's going on with that? Okay, like, who's the real vapor? I'm starting to hear a word that I don't want to hear when it comes to vaping, because I'm like kind of like a bartender out there. Like I get a million emails and everybody they're dumping all their issues on me, like I'm a psychiatrist or something. But I'm getting this word and I'm hearing it, and the word is discouraged. People are getting discouraged with vaping. That really bothers me. It bothers me because they're getting discouraged with the ultra high wattage devices. They're getting discouraged with the elitists vapors who think that they're doing it right and you're doing it wrong because I don't have an expensive device. They're getting discouraged with the cloud chasing and what they're seeing from that community. Look, I have nothing against cloud chasing. What I have against is people doing it unsafely. Right? And people just seeing that giant cloud and they say, I want that, I'm going to get that, and I don't care about doing the research and understanding the safety aspects with that, right? But I don't want people to get discouraged. Okay, my boyfriend Dimitri, you guys know Dimitri, the vaping Greek, right? He says something. He says, hello, my fellow vapors. Actually, he says it like this, hello, my fellow vapors. That's the way he says it. But it's not hello, my fellow cloud chasers. It's not hello, my fellow sub-owners. It's not hello, my fellow Clearmizer user. It's my fellow vapors. I don't care how you vape. The one thing that we all have in common is we don't smoke anymore. Why can't we grab onto that? Why can't we focus on that as the most important thing as opposed to how we do it, how we achieve it? Because how we achieve it is not what's important here, folks. The fact that we're doing it and not smoking anymore, that's the important thing. So, thank you. But I mean, seriously. And what I don't want people to do is I don't want people to get discouraged with vaping. And I certainly don't, and because this is happening too, I don't want people to feel uncomfortable by going to an event like this. This is a different kind of event, but going to an event like ECC and being embarrassed or feeling uncomfortable because they're using an ego. That's ridiculous, okay? They're still vaping. Hello, my fellow vapors.
Message entendu, je crois.
Many thanks. In order to conclude, Jan has something to tell us, but also I would like to ask you what do you think of cinema, of movie? And we know that in the history of tobacco, cinema movies have an important impact on addiction, on cigarettes, on that attractiveness, on a social point of view. Also linked to the hero, we all have these pictures in mind, and we've seen that recently. In fact, in The Tourist, if I'm not wrong, we have also that picture in that movie. So, on an artistic point of view, how do you feel the arrival of the VAP community, of the VAP culture in the movie? I think it is really a window linked to behavior, linked to the models, and we like Sergio Leone's films, and we are not becoming pistoleros. But anyway, we may smoke as Clint Eastwood, for example. But having said that, I'm making a movie on that topic. I was really, really interested in, that question. I was wondering why in science fiction movies, why do we have tobacco while androids are created and cars fly? Blade Runner, you remember that movie? We have a wonderful, enormous, huge city. You have replicants, so-called, and it is your technical level, which is just incredible. And you in the film, in fact, in the movie, it's very important. And you have machines that fly, and you always see since the beginning all the. There is a smoker with a cigarette. That's interesting. Pay attention to that, because in that movie we want to capture the future. We want to. Actually, I am just giving you one of my secrets. But anyway, why Panam in the film? it is an emblem for the future. Ridley Scott movie. You have advertisements for a flying company. They have chosen Pan Am because it is giant and it cannot fall. They didn't choose American Airlines, and Stanley Kubrick chose also Pan Am for the vessel going to the moon. It is Pan Am vessel because it's so huge, so big company that movie maker cannot imagine it will fall. So I will start my movie from an idea that is being creating from giants, and the future for me and all movies makers should have invented that, should really have imagined a future with machines absorbing nicotines, with colored vapors, and ciders really are linked to that. So I think we have two aspects. First of all, the future impossible without tobacco, and tobacco is so important. It has a glamour dimension, and the hero is always associated with tobacco. And beyond that, all industries put a lot of money in Hollywood. So maybe it's not the point that why Ridley Scott has imagined something without tobacco, but at a certain point is how did he have money from the industries in order to see the future and see the possibility to imagine the future with tobacco and smoking cigarettes. So I think really that is absolutely fascinating, and I make documentaries and different fictions, and I am passionate with that. So what will be the future? If I am not making a historical movie, well, I will choose my characters and they will vape. That's it. Beautiful machines, vaping. That's it. And I do believe that is very important. So are they the good ones or the bad ones? Are they the heroes or not?
And in Hollywood, because I was in California and I went to Hollywood as well, and I saw indeed that tobacco industry companies are going to invest in movies. So the industry is not that strong enough in order to give money to show somebody in the movie who's vaping. But just imagine if that would happen. You're a producer, and you say, okay, we're going to give you $400,000 just to put somebody on the screen with a vapor. So the same thing happened with the regular tobacco so many years ago. That's a very interesting question, because there's a paradox in your project. Basically, you asked funding, private funding coming from movie houses, and you asked financing to be able to create your documentary, because this was still a taboo subject at the time. And you said, okay, no, this is too delicate as a subject. And you asked participative budgets, extra budget. It should be very frustrating not to be able to talk about a certain subject in your movie, because there's, of course, the trauma of tobacco in the movies, and it's more complex than this, because today in the finance system of movies, and I wanted to make a movie, I'm a movie maker, and I'm a vapor. I wanted to introduce this in the movies. So it's my job to do this in this point of history, because there's no movies on this yet. So for me, it's going to be really easy, because I know the people within this world. I will create a documentary with some cultural levels in it, and of course, I will hope that I can put it on the screen as quickly as possible. But it's a subject I'm really interested in, so it's easy for me to make this kind of documentary. And the people tell me, okay, tobacco and movies do not go together hand in hand very well. So, and then television, that's not possible. So I have to take cinema. I have to go through another door. And okay, that's why I said I'm going to take contact with people from cinema, from the movie world. This publicity, isn't it frustrating that the same company who you went to that they're passing by somebody else? No, because it's a Far West, for example, where the sheriffs just arrive and I'm shooting this movie. And in this movie, it could be fantastic. And that's what I believe. Or maybe not. Maybe the liquid will be prohibited, and I'll have to put everything down. So I don't know. I'm a movie maker. I'm going to defend my cause, and I'm going to defend this point in history. But somewhere we are facing the incognito. We don't know what is going to happen. There's a number of people involved in this project, and how can this be stopped? That's something you said. So the question is, and I'm in the middle of this, and the broadcasters have the same problem as the regulatory institutes, because we don't know where it goes to. Brussels has classified the e-cigarette as a tobacco product, and maybe tomorrow something else will happen. I don't know what will happen in the future, but it's just to give people an idea of what happened in a certain moment in time. And I think the history has learned to me that making a movie on this, a documentary on this, is very important, because you don't know which direction it is going to go. And the traditional circuits, which I normally use for financing, well, they don't want to be involved. So I'm trying to use other ways. So we have a boutique, by the way. We have a small shop. And I'm looking for fundings as well with other companies. I'm just going to try and use these and realize my project. Short movies, well, I have 200 people in my technical team. I'm the movie maker. And we went to Taiwan, by the way. We were shooting in the streets where we want to give an image of somebody vaping and something futuristic. And no, I had to adjust my system. So it all depends on the way you shoot. And nobody knows what is going to happen in the future. I'm not sure if I responded to your question, if I replied well, but we're all actors in this movie, of course, within this culture. And as Jan said before, this culture is enriched by its diversity. And we are here during this fair. We are discussing a lot of economical, political subjects, all kinds of aspects of the vaping culture. Thank you for your answers, for your clear answers. Thank you, Phil, for joining us this conference. Jan, I think you're going to talk about your documentary later on. Oliver, thank you as well. All go to the vaping.com website, and I hope that the forum will live a long life, and we will see each other tomorrow. Thank you.